All right, we are live with Rosa Lee. I am so excited to be here. By the way, I was just remarking before we went live on how amazing she looks, and I feel like it's personal branding 101
Thank you,
to
Allie.
be so well sort of in your brand. I love it. I am super excited. You guys have seen a lot of me this week, and we're going to keep this up. I love doing this. I love getting the chance to interview people like Rosa about her amazing story. I am Allie Wyatt, co founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective, and the 10th House, which is our private membership community, and the North, which is our expert advisory marketplace. The 10th House, as a quick reminder, we have open enrollment effectively right now. You can go on and apply to be part of our tech cohort. And tech cohort includes everybody who is in fintech or prop tech or retail tech, any sort of tech business. This is the place for you. We'll be having people talk about everything from creating your MVP to building and scaling your team to creating a go-to-market strategy to finding funding in the right places and who the great investment firms are versus the ones that you might not have as the right fit. So super excited about that. Definitely apply. We'll drop the link into the comments. But without further ado, I cannot wait to get into it with Rosa. She's a mini celebrity, if you will. She's been on Shark Tank. So I'm excited to hear about that and ask some questions. But I'm going to give a little background on her. She is the founder and CEO of Wild Wonder. For those of you who haven't seen it, I've seen it everywhere. It's amazing. It's the world's first sparkling beverage to combine both prebiotics and probiotics for a healthy gut. And as a Stanford Business School graduate and former private equity and venture investor, she turned to food as the solution to her stress-induced health issues while working on Wall Street. I feel like we've all had some of those in our early careers, but especially those industries. And in 2020, Wild Wonder was born. And by 2021, the company raised seed funding, and Lee expanded her business outside of the Northern California area where it was previously sold exclusively. And she showcased her bold, effervescent flavors on Shark Tank in 2023 and winning over Guest Shark and DoorDash CEO Tony Zhu. The business has continued to expand, and Wild Wonder can now be found at Sprouts, the Fresh Market, Erewhon, and select Whole Foods and Target locations. So amazing distribution. Can you tell us a little bit about Wild Wonder and what led you to launching it?
Yeah, well, thank you for the awesome introduction. That was such a great summary of everything we've been through. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first
Isn't it
LinkedIn
funny to
Live.
hear it secondhand and be like, wow, I've done all of this? Right?
Yeah, it's very exciting when you summarize it. Yeah, I mean, Wild Wonder is a sparkling beverage. We actually call this a refresher with really unique flavors and gut healthy benefits. So all inspired by my grandmother's herbal tonics. So she actually raised me for the first 12 years of my life and brewed a lot of these herbal tonics growing up, really taught me the philosophy of food as medicine. And I started my career in finance, as you said, worked a lot of stressful jobs and started to see the effect of that on my body, mostly my gut. And we
Yeah.
probably all know now that gut health affects all aspects of our wellness, from immune health, brain health, inflammatory response, literally everything. So I started looking into gut health, and this is before gut health really became a thing, and really believed in it. So after I graduated from business school, I wanted to do something I'm personally passionate about, and that's really to bring these gut healthy and heritage inspired ingredients to the masses and make gut health really delicious, really accessible. I'm a huge foodie. I don't believe in giving up taste for health. So a lot of functional beverages out there don't taste that good. So Wild Wonder doesn't use any stevia. There's no aftertaste. We have low sugar. We have really awesome, delicious flavors like the ones you see in the background: strawberry passion, raspberry
I know I'm
lychee.
craving it right now, just staring at your labels.
And they're all, culturally and botanically influenced. So we're not going after your traditional soda flavors, but bring something different to the retail space and bring representation to the retail space, which is super exciting.
Love it. And let's talk about Shark Tank now, which
Yeah.
I've been so excited to talk about. It's like pitching on steroids, right? It's a
Mhm.
super intense experience, I can imagine. I mean, I've never been on it myself. How did you prepare for that pitch? And from a valuation perspective and a projection perspective, because I think probably a lot of founders are out there and they're like, how do I figure out how do I put a value on my business, especially if
Mhm.
it's very young, right? You probably were a little bit more further along, so might have been a little bit easier. But would love to hear your process.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very long process. So Shark Tank actually originally reached out to me back in 2021. This is at the height of COVID, and we
Wow.
weren't ready for it.
Proactively, or had you
Yeah, so
submitted
they actually
yourself?
do reach out to brands that they discover either on social, or I actually don't know how they heard about us, but they reached out to me, and we were very much focused on fixing the supply chain. This is, you probably remember, in 2020 to 2022, it was really hard to really like get suppliers, raw materials sourced.
Yeah.
Entire supply chain broke down because of COVID. So at the time, we were very much focused on building our infrastructure to scale. We were very focused on one region, which is California. I didn't want to really expand until we really got our product right, feel strongly about the ability to scale at a very sustainable cost. So I actually didn't respond in 2021, and a whole year later, when we had multiple co-packers, when we really built up our infrastructure to scale, I reached back out to Shark Tank and said, "Look, we're ready. I'm fashionably late, but we're really excited to work with Shark Tank and gone through a very long process of screening. I would say it took about multiple months, and then they do go through a very rigorous process where there's your personal application, your business application. There's multiple video chats with multiple producers, and once I was given the green light to prep. So there's after the screening, you start prepping with the producers on the pitch, on the stage set, how to prepare
Oh, wow.
for actual taping. And then there's
Yeah.
another screening with producers to give you the final green light to actually tape. So then once I was given a date to fly down to LA, I was also constantly reminded during that process that just because you tape, you're not guaranteed to air. So some
Oh,
people
really? I
work
didn't realize.
really hard. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of brands who go through the hard work and go through months of preparation, even tape, and don't see the light of day. I mean, they're people just don't know about their taping. A large percentage of people who tape for Shark Tank actually don't get aired, which really sucks. um,
Wow.
so they really they care about content. Shark Tank has 4 million viewerships across the country, which is really great audience. It's awesome marketing. I did not believe in traditional TV until I did Shark Tank and realized how impactful it was, and really believed in kind of old media, almost like
Yeah.
over new media, because social media nowadays is so expensive.
Yeah.
But it was just an amazing experience because during the day of taping, the Sharks, there's basically a 2-week period that they tape all the Shark Tank episodes for the entire season. And so I taped in September of the previous year, of the year before we aired. Back then we were a smaller business. So by the time it aired, our business is already very different.
Yeah.
But it further really expanded the business, really brought a lot of brand awareness to us, not only just increased sales, but also awareness. And I would say, as because of Shark Tank, got retailers' attention and ended up
Yeah.
launching with a lot of different, flagship retailers across the country.
Wow. Now, I saw something really interesting that you did say, and I want to talk a little bit more about what you sort of learned from the producers about what makes a great pitch, right?
Mhm.
But before we go into that, I would love to hear a little bit more about, you had talked about actually in a story that we did on our own social about the fact that you really have to have your inventory prepared. And you also said that you waited, right, a year
Yeah.
until you had everything in place. Can you talk a little bit more about why that is, right? Like why do you and what it sort of takes as an F&B founder to be prepared, and ultimately what happens once you do get all those sales, right? Once Whole Foods does approach you and you want to expand into retailers across the country.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's just so much emphasis on growth for everyone, from the investor community, from also just in general, people are attracted to shiny objects, right? So it's hard to say no, but I would say a lot of startups fail because they grow too fast, or because they, want to launch with a Target nationally, or want to launch with a Whole Foods, and when they're not ready. And so there's so much importance to getting products off the shelf, more important than getting it on the shelf. So until we were ready to say, hey, we feel really good about our velocity, we feel really good about our inventory situation, we just didn't want to expand. So when it comes to inventory, obviously, if you're out of stock, retailers just aren't going to be happy about it, because it takes, every shelf space costs so much money, and they want to make sure that you're turning on shelf, you have products on shelf to essentially pay your rent. So we basically, we just knew that, we were working with a smaller co-packer at the time, and with all the supply chain situation during COVID, we wanted to focus on the few retailers that we could really serve, and serve well. And even if, we were to air on Shark Tank or have a lot of marketing, we just wouldn't be able to support the growth. So we actually did not do marketing for the first 2 years. We basically didn't spend any money. We really focused on getting the product right. So when I first launched Wild Wonder, it was in a glass bottle. And we realized that the turns weren't that good. And during COVID, everyone wanted something accessible. And I would say online, channel became really important, and it was impossible to ship glass. So we actually transitioned to cans. Immediately saw a huge impact from that transition, from both repeat purchase rates online as well as velocity in stores. So that was a really great move. And then we onboarded new co-packers. We diversified our entire supply chain. So we had multiple suppliers for every ingredient we sourced. And we also onboarded multiple 3PLs, essentially for shipping and fulfillment around the country, to really make sure our cost structure also works, because shipping liquid is not cheap. And we have very heavy boxes. So we wanted to optimize basically our entire operations before we scale. And then once we got that ready, we were ready to put marketing dollars behind it. So that's when we said, okay, let's go after Shark Tank and let's do some marketing.
How did you fund, if you weren't marketing yourself then, how did you fund those operational efficiencies that you were trying to build out in the infrastructure?
Yeah, so we, when I first started, I actually bootstrapped. So it was really hard. It was basically like funding from our own operations. I had one employee, and I was basically doing every aspects of the business, from like product to sales, marketing. And then I actually talked about this on Shark Tank. I even financed my car to like use the extra cash flow for the business, which is not much, but I did go out to angel investors and raised some seed funding once we had a product and basically proof of concept, had enough data to convince people, hey, this product moves, there's a market for it.
What was your proof of concept, Rosa?
Yeah, it was basically, we basically got the products to stores, and we started showing interest and demand. So, Velocity was doing well. The product was very on trend. People love the taste. It's a food and beverage product, so everything comes down to taste, which really affects the velocity and the repeat.
Yeah. And for those who don't know what velocity means, that are on this session, can you share what that means, and maybe some good benchmarks for them to think about if they're in F&B as well?
Yeah, definitely. So velocity is basically a measure of like how much people love your products. It's similar to like the online channel where you look at repeat purchase. Like, we're not trying to pay customers to buy the product. So, you can acquire a new customer with some advertising or marketing dollars, but are they actually coming back for it? So that's how we view velocity in stores, is how fast are the products moving off shelf. So, and, are people coming back for it after you run a promo and drive some trial? So that's a really good measure of the health of the brand.
And Rosa, if it's placed, like if you're on the bottom shelf or you have, not ideal positioning, if we're thinking about it in terms of real estate, how does that impact you? And how can you negotiate with a retailer on that? Or can you?
Yeah, no, great question. Everyone wants eye level. I mean, that's prime real estate. So
Yeah.
it's similar to like buying a store, right? It's like if you don't
Yeah.
have the best location, you just won't move.
Being on like
So we
floor versus
totally.
on street level.
So yeah, I mean, we are in the most coveted shelf. Like, it's if you walk into a store, there's not that many cold fridges, and stores obviously don't have the money and don't have the plan to expand all their fridges. So there's only like one or two cold drinks box that we work with, and we are in the cold drinks box, which is the fastest moving. It's where kombuchas are, all like the better for you sodas. It's basically the refrigerated section of the store. Really high velocity, which means that you have to move a lot of units to really deserve that space. So a lot of new brands like us, we start from either the very top shelf or the bottom shelf. And, until we prove out our velocity, we don't get that eye level. So now I do think, if you go into a store, you can see Wild Wonder eye level, because we have proven out velocity in a lot of stores, and it's a really awesome and differentiated product that are attracting new customers and bringing incremental revenue to retailers.
Got it. That's super, super helpful. I've always wondered that, right? Like, as you're getting into these key stores, how do you get into the best possible position to succeed?
Definitely.
I want to go back to Shark Tank again, because I want to understand also a little bit about what they shared from a pitching perspective will set you up for success. Can you share any of those learnings or takeaways that you found interesting or surprising?
Yeah. So the pitch is about 2 minutes. So everyone, for those who don't watch Shark Tank, by the way, I did not watch Shark Tank growing up. So I actually binged on like all the food and beverage episodes 2 weekends before my taping to make sure I understand the entire process, all the questions answered. But there's a 2-minute pitch. Everyone walks out of those doors and start pitching their business, and those 2 minutes are really the only thing you need to know beforehand, or the only thing you memorize beforehand, and everything else is kind of like reality TV. Anything goes, and the sharks would, throw questions at you, and whatever happens. There's no redo. So, it's really like, think about it like media. They just want really great content. So I think, if you watch all the Shark Tank episodes, they either paint you as a hero or a villain or someone who just like, there's like a comeback story that they really love. So, if they capture really great content, they can make a story out of it. Does not even, I feel like it doesn't matter, if your story is great or not. They just love the different stories and they put it together. I would say like the editors are actually the MVPs of the show. I was being grilled for an hour and a half, and my episode was 8 minutes. All the episodes are around 8 minutes. So just think about how much content they worked with to really condense it into, a 6-minute Q&A session.
Why do you think you made it through though with all of those, right? Like, what do you think stood out about your pitch and maybe your storytelling ability that made for great content?
Yeah, I mean, I was really fortunate to have a guest shark that really appreciated my story. So what Shark Tank does really well is they try to match sharks' background with the entrepreneurs and what they're doing. So there's not really a lot of food and beverage entrepreneurs out there. There's a ton of people who understand tech. We invest in consumer products, but not beverage. Beverage is actually like one of the most hated on categories because beverage distribution is really hard. If you watch all the Shark
You have
Tank
to have really high
episodes,
velocity.
high velocity, but it's a very competitive category because everyone wants to get
Yeah.
into those shelves. And if, all the sharks always say, oh, we don't invest in beverage distribution is really hard. And then for the guest shark, they actually told me, like right before I taped, there's an entrepreneur who a very successful shark who's in the food tech space. And I actually thought to myself before I even knew who was going to be my Shark Tank, I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if it's DoorDash or Uber Eats, because that's
Yeah.
food tech and that could really,
Yeah.
increase our distribution. And so when I heard Tony Xu, the CEO of DoorDash, was going to be a guest shark, I was so excited because that's really the one shark I was going after, who
That's
could not
amazing.
only bring in, the financial capital, but also strategic value. So we're actually
Yeah.
currently onboarding with DoorDash. We're doing various initiatives with them, which is super exciting. It really helps to bring more awareness, more trial, more sales for the brand. But yeah, I was basically going after him. And I think what made it interesting was like I shared my immigrant story, which he really connected with. He had a very similar story, where he was also raised by his grandparents while his parents immigrated to the States. And obviously very entrepreneurial, very successful. So he's very supportive of people with similar backgrounds. We really connected on that level. And he also just like has a lot of expertise in scaling business and could actually help us to expand. So I think that story, my stories and I shared a lot about how through COVID, we were completely wiped out. Our business was wiped out because my very first channel was food service. It was
Yeah.
not
I
retail,
was going to actually get
online.
into that. That was my next question, right?
Yeah. So that was the
How you
story that all the
started
sharks
versus
connected
going
with.
to D2C. It was what would you say?
Oh, I was saying that it was the story that all the sharks connected with, and I think they really, even though Shark Tank, like the sharks may not seem like the nicest people, because obviously they're dramatic, but they're actually very supportive of passionate entrepreneurs who are here to build something. So after I
Yeah.
share the story about COVID and how I persevered through COVID, they really supported the brand, and I think they truly thought that the product was awesome. Everyone loved the product, which was my first goal, is to have the sharks enjoy the product. Doesn't matter if they're investors or not, but if they
Yeah.
like the product, then consumers will be more convinced to purchase them.
Yeah.
But I talked about the food service story. So the reason I went after food service, not retail, is because retail is very expensive
Can
for people
Rosie,
who
can you
live in.
explain a little bit because you were going into corporate cafeterias and what sorts of when you say food service, what did your distribution look like, and how did
Yeah,
that differ from direct to consumer?
yeah, great question. So food service is a very broad term. I use for food service to basically include the cafes, micro kitchens at offices, like corporate cafeterias. Airports could be included in that as well. A lot of our sales were in office pantries. So like I was stocking, the Googles, the Metas, the LinkedIns. Those are huge tech companies who really value bringing health conscious food to their employees, or at the forefront of, driving very healthy, lifestyles. So when I first started Wild Wonder, I actually had large POs going out to those very large customers, and I did not do retail because it was expensive. You probably know, but there's like to get into stores, sometimes you have to pay for slotting fees. So it's just basically rent for shelf space. And then you have to do a lot of promos. You have to go in and check stores and demos and whatnot. So as a small team or a team of one or two, you really just can't afford it. So I decided to do the channel that basically can get me a lot of sales. And I already had, relationships with a lot of these cafeterias. I'm based in San Francisco, so it's, just a region I know very well.
Yeah.
So after I got the POs and obviously COVID hit, and so that entire channel was wiped out. So a lot of people, I think what they would have done is, get a job instead of going the hard way. So I decided to continue working on the product, and I really felt that there's something here, and um, we're doing something different. So I basically went door to door. I sold my
Wow.
products into over 100 stores in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was driving around when everyone was quarantining at home and basically helped store managers stock the shelves. I was like working in the grocery stores to convince people to like put my
Oh,
products on shelf. And I think
wow.
that's a story that,
Such a
was that?
beautiful entrepreneur. I said that's such a beautiful entrepreneur story. It's like it's what you have to do, and those are the people that are going to succeed.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think that's a story that, Mark Cuban and all the sharks um, were moved by. They love supporting entrepreneurs who are passionate and who hustle,
Yeah.
and who, do the things that don't scale at the beginning so that they can really learn the business. So yeah, after year one, I was in over 100 stores, including our local Whole Foods, which is very rare because during COVID, stores weren't bringing in new products. They were just trying to survive, and they were trying to keep
Yeah.
their employees safe. So for us to
Although
be able to get
groceries
into
doing
100 stores,
weren't grocers doing really well though during COVID because
depending on your
that's the
category.
only place people
Yeah.
were shopping.
Yeah, it's the only place people were going to. But most people are buying frozen food, and most people are buying the basics. So like our products are categorized as, a grab and go. When do
Yeah.
people buy grab and go products? Is when they're out and
Right.
about, when they're,
Right.
out at a park, when they're eating in a cafe, right? So the grab and go segment was actually down, and
Yeah.
it was either down or flat, and no one was buying these ready to drink beverages because everyone was just drinking their own drinks at home, like brewing tea, brewing
Yeah.
coffee. So yeah, so basically, no one wanted to get any new products in the ready to drink section, which is where our products fall. And so it's very hard to get into stores, and a lot of stores weren't getting new products. They were just trying to like keep the existing products in stock, and a lot of suppliers went out of business because of supply chain issues. So to really get into the grocery stores in the first place was really hard, and especially hard for our category. But I do think that first year of hustle really helped me and helped our business because we learned a lot about retail. We really got a lot of people on board because we're here to really bring representation, bring new products to stores. We didn't just give up. So the Sharks really connected with that story. And the whole first 2 years also helped us to diversify the business. Um, because food service shut down, in order to bring cash flow in the door and survive, I basically had to open up retail and also had to open up online channel because everyone was shopping online, and like the transition from retail, like brick and mortar, to online really accelerated. So basically build our Shopify within 3 or 4 months, and we started to transition all my relationships, my food service contacts to our online channel so we can service those employees in the comfort of their home. And that really helped us to build really a diversified channel strategy. So now we're omni-channel. So we sell in retail, we sell food service, like kind of the old way. Now the offices are back. We're restocking the offices. We are restocking all the cafes and the airports as well. And then we're very, strong in retail. We also build a really strong online business. And that's, where we have direct relationships with our customers through our D2C business.
How do you create a strong online beverage business? Right? Like
Well,
I'm
first
so
of all,
interested.
you cannot sell in glass bottles. Like I can tell you that much. We started in glass, and there's so much breakage issues, and it was so heavy to ship. So
Yeah.
cans really help to, make online more accessible. I think price point really matters. I think it's a lot more expensive to sell water Online, because while there's price point so low and you basically can't make any money, we have a premium product. So it's a functional beverage, organic certified. There's prebiotic and probiotic in the drinks. So people understand the value, and the price point helps us to stay. We're actually break even online. We are actually profitable selling online, which is very
Yeah.
rare as well.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of that transition from food service and then into direct to consumer, how did your team change? Right? It was you and one other person when it was the food service business.
Mhm.
By the way, who was that other person? I was
Uh,
wondering who
our
hired.
director of operations, Steven, who's literally been with us since the very beginning, he joined me like right before COVID, and COVID hit. And I was like, oh man, like we better be able to like make payroll. and um and honestly, it's been amazing because at the beginning, everyone does everything. So
Yeah.
he was working with me on all aspects of the business. There's no like, oh, you do sales, you do operations. Like everyone was wearing all the hats, right? So he understood the business similar to the way I understood the business. So we knew supply chain, manufacturing, product, marketing, sales. So then as we were expanding, we started hiring more people. So my second hire was sales, and who's also still with us, our director of sales.
Wow.
And most of the people are still with us today. So it's really amazing to just see, like from the very beginning, how we really hustled as a small brand, and now we have a much larger team. And then we started hiring more sales. So most of my hires were operations and sales because we
Yeah.
didn't do marketing. And I only just hired a director of brand marketing. I want to say a month or two ago, because
Wow.
now we have so much more distribution. We can actually do marketing that will generate an impact. When we didn't have as much national distribution, like I felt like marketing would just fall flat. Like
Yeah.
people wouldn't be able to access the product. So what's the point?
Yeah. But the other question is, because a lot of times I was just actually having a conversation with some founders last night. They're in the beauty space, and they were saying when you go into retail, you also have to have a big marketing budget behind it in order for it to succeed, because you need to be able to break through. There needs to be a brand halo. There needs to be awareness and sort of constantly top of mind work done. So how would you is it not the same when it comes to beverage, right? Like once
Oh,
you
it's
sort of
definitely the same. Beverage is more expensive. So I would say we focus on regional retailers.
yeah,
It was much easier to play at a regional level, and we wanted to really go deep but not wide. So in California, we focused in California
yeah,
for, gosh, first 3 years of the business, I want to say. And so it's much easier to take care of the Whole Foods, the Sprouts, all the regional retailers in California. And then once we had a bigger budget, then we could expand more nationally. It is extremely hard to do well in every region that you're in because you don't have
yeah.
people there. So, especially for beverage, it's a very
Field
fast
marketing?
turn. What's that?
Did you do field marketing in California? Like how
Yeah.
did you
So,
Okay.
yep, we did field marketing. A lot of things we did don't scale that well, but they are
Yeah,
important to build a brand. So we would do events, we would do sampling at the retailers that could really generate volume for us. And then we did promos to drive trial. We just didn't do as much kind of broad national marketing since
got
our
it.
products weren't accessible. But for a lot of the regional retailers, we did support them.
And what did that part of your team look like? The people that were like in those stores, or was it
Mhm.
you and your head of
Yeah, so the
operations?
first 3 years was a small team, very much focused on California. So we had, outside of myself, we had basically one operations and then two sales, one focused on NorCal and one focused on SoCal.
Got it. And then in terms of funding, it's super
Mhm.
impressive that you bootstrapped a lot of it. You got a little bit of angel money. Some of our founders had asked ahead of this, what were some other alternative funding methods you had used to get yourself there? Because it's so hard, especially right now, to get
Mhm.
funding for a beverage brand, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was hard to get funding for any brand outside of tech, I think. Um, I would say there's a lot of our funding needs are inventory related. So, when we run these production runs, it just costs a lot of money because you have to front the raw materials, the packaging, the labor cost before you generate revenue. So
Yeah.
there's a ton of funding platforms out there that do inventory financing and accounts receivable financing. So those are, I would say, like alternative channels that we still use today to really help fund our business operations. I mean, debt financing is always cheaper than equity, even though interest rates high is still a lot cheaper than giving away equity. So I definitely recommend that. During COVID, we also got some kind of grants.
Yeah.
Different organizations supported small businesses. So that was helpful. We worked with, we don't work with them now, but we worked with a platform back then called Kickfurther, who also helped with inventory financing. Now we're able to work with larger platforms out there.
Yeah.
But I would say, I do think it's, running a very lean and efficient operation is really key because investors nowadays, like equity investors, all care about profitability.
Yeah.
It's not the same as 5 years ago. So people care about your margins. People care about how close you are to profitable. So that's a good story to tell regardless. And if you run a very, very lean operation and are very efficient, then you don't need funding as much. So it was kind of, we actually didn't need as much funding as, most beverage and food and beverage brands because I've really, basically worked out our operations in a way that's efficient, and we're actually very close to being profitable. So even when the markets aren't great for fundraising, we don't have to worry as much about bringing money in. So we can really just work with our current business and, work with our infrastructure, what we can do to scale.
That's amazing. And it's something that I often tell consumer founders right now because it's especially hard. Did you take on additional funding outside of that angel round?
We did, yeah. So we did bring in additional investors on board. We just, but we didn't raise nearly as much money as probably a lot of the brands out there.
Got it. And in terms of as you're sort of thinking about uh, basically approaching retailers, what benchmarks do you think you should have in place when you start to approach as a food or beverage brand?
Yeah, I would say velocity is the most
Yeah.
important people care about. And everything comes in stages. It's not like you go from zero to launching nationally with a target. So we
Yeah.
basically went from the natural channel, so the Whole Foods, the Sprouts, a lot of the kind of in the regional retailers that really care about better for you products, organic products. And then we worked our way to Target, and now we're actually in the process of launching with Albertson Safeway, but we didn't approach them in the first place or like in the first 3 years because we weren't ready for them. So I would say, once we prove out our velocity in certain retailers, then other retailers will actually appreciate the product more and say, hey, you have history, there's sales data, we know exactly how you're going to sell or you're going to sell, so then they can give us shelf space.
Those retail economics, I think, are so important to understand when you are approaching them so that you come in a position of knowledge and power and to sort of help them with their own job, right? Because they're at the end of the day accountable for certain success metrics. So
100%. Yeah.
I love that you knew that going in. And was that something that you were educated on by your salespeople? Did they have existing relationships, or was that something that you ultimately got yourselves in the door with them?
Yeah, I would say we started like our team. Everyone has some level of relationships. Like at first, it was regional retailers, so we all got into different regions. I think at the national level, that's much harder. So until like at the end of the day, it's not so much about relationships. It's really about how the brand is doing. So if the brand is doing well, if the brand's performing well, that data will show buyers that, we deserve shelf space. Even if people were to come in and say, hey, I can bring you into a Albertsons Safeway or Kroger or Target, like if you don't perform, it almost doesn't matter. Like, why waste the money to get shelf space just to get off the shelf? Might as well just focus more on the product and make sure, until you have a good product, then selling to the retailers.
And you were giving such tangible, helpful advice. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to a couple more questions from our members, and then I would love to hear what's next for Wild Wonder because we have a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
But Jasmine N asked, what should new brands focus on from a customer acquisition perspective?
Yeah, I would say really get as much information on the product as possible. So do people want this product? And at the end of the day, it's about product market fit. So, and there's metrics that will show you that. So I would really encourage everyone to be honest with yourself. So for instance, in retail, it's really velocity, right? So some people will say, hey, I'm going to get my products on the shelf. And then in order to convince buyers to bring me into more stores and expand us, we're going to just help drive velocity with various marketing measures. Some people literally go in the store and buy their own products. And that, as much as like it helps with 1 or 2 stores, it's not going to help you in the long run. So I actually would really encourage people to just like figure out what's the baseline velocity without any marketing so that you can understand, are people coming back to it after you do a demo, after you run a promo? What is the velocity? Are people coming back? So similar to online channel, like I think online data is so much easier to work with too, because it's more transparent.
Yeah.
You'll know exactly what the sales are. You know exactly, what the percent, what the percent of sales generated from existing customers. Like, how long do people usually stay with you? When can you actually pay back that customer once you acquire them? So those data is really helpful. So I would just really focus on iterating the product, until you get to the point where you feel confident about putting some marketing dollars behind it.
Super helpful. Then Anna Z asked, how do you manage cash flow and inventory as you scale? Do you have some tips for that on tactically how to do that?
Yeah, I use Excel for everything. I think there's a lot of platforms out there that probably will do this. I come from a finance background, so I really appreciate Excel and spreadsheets. I'm good with numbers. So it's I would say it's very important to make sure that cash flow works. Like get help from people with finance backgrounds. If you don't, to really build out a nice cash flow model so you can really understand on a weekly basis or monthly basis, like what's going out the door, what's coming in the door. And if you're running a sustainable operation.
I want to hear now what's next for you, Rosa and Wild Wonder. Like, what are the next big initiatives? How can we support you? How can people stay in touch with you? Because again, you are just a wealth of knowledge. And I think that the sort of tactical things that you've shared with us today are so important as people think about building their business and any business.
Yeah, definitely. We got a lot of initiatives coming up this year. It's super exciting. We're actually doing marketing now, which is awesome. So starting this month, you probably see this Herbalicious hat. We're running a campaign in New York, actually. You'll see trucks running around New York with Wild Wonder branding, which I'm really excited about. We finally launched on the East Coast. Whole Foods in New York, Wegmans, a lot of the retailers in New York. So really excited. I used to live there, so I'm personally very excited to stock the shelves there. And we have a really awesome collaboration coming up in July as well. A new product launch. So definitely follow us on social at Drink Wild Wonder. You'll see all the news coming out, but we got some really exciting campaigns coming up.
Amazing. Yeah. So everybody go and support. And where can they follow you specifically?
Oh, I am, on Instagram at Rosalie Says, and then my email is rosa@drinkwildwonder.com.
Amazing. Rosa, this has been so helpful. We're going to wrap, but everybody, quick reminder, 10th House is our private membership community. We have cohorts that go live every couple of months. We focus on different industries. The industry right now is women in tech. So if you are a tech founder or you know a tech founder that would benefit from having an incredible community full of resources, conversations like these, where we can help each other get ahead by sharing how to get through those roadblocks, that would be great. I don't remember when we're closing, but we'll put that in the comments. And thank you all for joining. And Rosa, again, you are incredible. We are so grateful for all of your learnings that you're sharing with us.
Thank you so much, Allie. So fun to have a conversation with you.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.